In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
Does it ever make you feel like maybe that thing is like yelling at you? Like it's like, feed me. I'm hungry. Like you're just like a slave to the machine. Really? Huh. That's a really interesting outfit you're wearing too, by the way. Yeah, I know. He's running late. You know, sometimes he just runs late. What can I say? Oh, hey.
Hey,
Jack.
I'm sorry, I'm running late. Hey, that's a really interesting outfit you're wearing. Is that one piece? You don't sleep in that, do you? No. Sorry, we're not supposed to talk to them anymore. Just place our order and leave.
Don't bother the barista behind the counter. Just grab your cup and be on your way, sir.
I quit, you know me, the story. I was addicted to, I called it my one corporate vice because I was a Starbucks drinker for 25 years, and the espresso
Did you just say
habit.
Did you just say Starbucks?
Yes.
Did he just say Starbucks?
Oh, there it is.
The Mermaid Corporation.
The siren, actually. It's a siren,
That's
they'll
right,
have you know.
siren.
If you call it a mermaid, someone in there will go, it's a siren. She's a siren. It's the same thing. Then they go into explaining what it is. You go, yeah, I know. I know. A mermaid, just a bigger bitch, right? One little...
I don't know. Maybe a siren would be a little bit more.
Sirens enchant men and like devour their souls.
Right.
So they're basically just kind of like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
They're a little worse, I think.
Yeah, but the habit actually goes back about 5 years before that, when the whole craze started, early 90s. So I have about 30 years of dealing with baristas, and I've known so many of them over the years.
Well, you were a barista at one point. You were among the ranks.
I was briefly, a couple times briefly, I was. Well, when I was in my late teens, when no one knew what a barista was, I remember reading an article about it that somebody put together.
No, it's barista. It's barista. If you're
barista or the men?
If you're a man, it's a barista.
A barista and a baristet. He said it sounded like some kind of a barrister who hadn't completed his training yet. So a British lawyer, which they're known as barristers. But it's funny in just the, talk to them, don't talk to them, don't look at them. I miss that, because that used to be my social time pretty much. I was a married guy through much of that time, but a lot of my just social time, I didn't have a lot of friends that I hung out with. So that was my social hour, was when I would go in, and sometimes I'd be in and out and the interactions would be quick. And sometimes I'd linger for hours if the conversations were interesting or deep, or I was just feeling like screwing around for long enough, or trying to avoid going home because I knew I was in trouble or something like that, then
you would just hang out with the baristas,
stretch your counter time out
at the siren.
So many different personalities that you run across, and just women. It's so funny, as a straight guy, you have to respect this remark if you're a woman, because men are stupid, and a lot of them sadly are piggish and all these other things they get accused of, at least to a small degree. But I just would love to trade places. I'd love to have a woman trade places with a decent, because I consider myself to be a decent-minded straight man. I mean, I do not possess an enormous amount of sexual motivations. Yes, I can find the opposite sex attractive and certainly notice it. But again, these baristas, some of whom were, college age centerfold 10s, right? And some of them who were as homely as you could get, that And it ran the gamut of what their perception of you wanting to chat with them
100%.
was. And it didn't matter because some of the bunnies were absolutely chatty. And, oh my gosh, really? That's amazing. And then other ones, it's the same thing. Like, don't even look at me. What are you doing? Like, you're talking. No, there's no talking to me. You don't talk to me ever. You just want me. All men want me, and that's all they want, and that's all they're ever going to want. So, but it ran down the other direction too. It went to the, to the troglodytes of the world on, and they were just, really, that's interesting, or, oh, don't look at me. It's just, you're one of those horrible men, It's just funny when you think back on all of them, because I bring up some of these characters I've run across, some of these people I've run across at times. And I just brought up one the other night. She was an art student, a failed art student, she said. She always was a self-described failed art student. Oh, she was just dour about life to that point. It was really sad to see, because I'm guessing she was probably maybe 29 or 28, but she'd said, yeah, everybody in the world is mean. So I used to go to art school in the big city, but everybody's mean. And I just quit because everybody was mean, and I left. And I was just like, so you're telling me you left art school because others were critical of your work? And she said, well, it was more than just that. And I'm like, what more was it to make you quit school? Did someone actually stalk or harass you? No, look, Jack, people are just mean. Okay. And I'm just going to leave it at that. They're just mean.
Yeah.
The world is mean, and I quit, and that's all there is to it. And I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. Like, okay, all right, that's fine. I mean, I'm trying to get to know you a little better in passing just because I'm interested. Well,
you just brought up something about the art school. This reminds me of a quote that I heard somebody say of John Candy, which was, you're not trying comedy. You're either doing it or you're not.
Oh.
And it's the same thing with art. Yeah. You don't need to be an art student. You're either doing art or you're not.
Unfortunately, she's premising that remark, no doubt, on the merits that everybody in Western society is based on. A, are you making money at it? And B, have you won any awards lately at it? And for her as a student, there wouldn't have probably been much of an A yet, but the B wasn't coming in. This goes right back to one of Jack Hansen's 101 lessons about, if you paint, you're a painter. If you write, you're a writer. Well, but I don't make any money at it. Oh, God, here we go. So you're not validated by the almighty dollar, so therefore you're invalid as any of those things. Listen, that's not how God intended it. And yes, I'm going to drag him into this equation, or it, or whatever you want to call it. Her. Let's just call it her. I mean, yes, that's the way it's supposed to be. If you write, you're a writer. If you paint, you're a painter. If you're an artist, you do any kind of art, you're an artist. I mean, you don't have to make money at it, trust me, but you'd like to. And sometimes, in fact, I would think a lot of times your passions are not all they're cracked up to be in the workplace, but that's been the subject of a different show at different times. So, but anyway, we'll dedicate this episode of Existence Brewing to all of the baristas
and the failed artists,
kind and failed artists, but mostly from my side, the baristas that were kind or entirely too rude or indifferent, who really were thrilled to see me every day or hated my guts, either secretly or outwardly, because there have been all of those. And it made for a bounty of colorful interest over the years. And at the same time, I would just like to also put this out to not only Starbucks, but to the entirety of corporate business, where you have people at the counter who are serving you, or where you wait for food or you order something. And because it's trickled down now, this trend that started in the corporate world, it's trickled down to the mom and pops, and they're having their employees do it too. For God's sake, stop telling your employees, ordering them basically, to ask these vapid questions that they don't care about related to how someone's day has been, because it's transparent and it's fake. And it's going to destroy exactly what I'm talking about. Because when you go in and you can just tell, so how's your day going today? It's just like, you're being told to ask me that. You don't care how my day is going. And the premise of it is to make me feel more, it's more inviting. Oh, they always ask me how I'm doing. Are you really not seeing through that? I mean, I had people that I worked to get to know that I was never going to spend a microsecond with outside of that business, from behind the counter, who genuinely cared about how my day was going when I came in just to get my coffee for 10 minutes before I left. That's the relationship I want to have with any person in this lifetime. And I established that. I worked to build that through my own affable nature, through my own efforts to be friendly and approachable and conversational. Fucking corporateers, they find every way to despoil life that they can. And here's another one. So what are you out doing today? You give a fuck. You're at Taco Bell. You've been stuck here since 4. You're going to be here till midnight. You don't care how my day's going.
I think that's the key word. Don't ask me that. Conversational. Like that is the key word, conversational. And it's not one way. It's a two-way aerobic exercise that you're doing back and forth with. And I think good salespeople are that way, that they have a tendency to try to get a rapport going. And it's not just hey, like me, but it's it's this. You definitely, it's that genuine conversation. I think that you're touching on.
Well, and then let's fall back to the college hotties that work wherever it is, at Starbucks or whatever.
Abercrombie.
You're Abercrombie and Fitch. Fine, you're going to give the wrong impression to certain customers that they don't want any additional attention from by ordering them to say, so what are you out doing today? And it's like, now that you asked, I came in to see you.
We used to work with a guy. We used to work with a guy that used to do that. He would go to places because he had a factuation. Is that the word? Factuation? Infatuation, yeah.
He was infatuated with.
He was infatuated with the people that would go there. In fact, he used to do that at Dairy Queen. He used to do that at a few different places.
The malt shop is his hangout.
Yes, the malt shop. Yes. Yeah.
But see, and so you're putting your lovelies in jeopardy when you stick them at the counter and insist that they ask how a person's day is going. So how are you today? What's going on in your world? And just like, you give a guy an inch, he's going to take 12 miles. If you are just trying to be nice to a man as a woman, a straight woman, you better think again, because that can give the wrong impression very quickly, because men, again, are a lot of them looking for any little crack in the door they can to, she wants me. This is it. I'm definitely going to get some. I'm definitely going to score. Well, something actually might, but it will take months of honest and true caressing of this situation to
caressing.
You don't have
and
you don't have the stick-to-itiveness to do this.
I'm sorry, buddy. Bruno, but to stop you there in your tracks, not everybody wants to sleep with you, Bruno. So just calm down.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. But here's the thing: I was married to a woman for a long time who presented nothing but the total hypocrisy of what it can be to be a very attractive person, because my ex-wife is a very attractive person and she's very well endowed, but she would always do this. Let's dress up. And there was a line from an old episode of Malcolm in the Middle, I think, where a woman on there had huge boobs, and Jane Kaczmarek, who was the mom on the show of the Rowdy Boys, and Bryan Cranston, who played the husband, they all finally got into it at the end of the show after a bunch of fake neighborliness. And she remarked on the boobs that the neighbor constantly had out as 2 eggs laying on a plate. And so I've borrowed that ever since. And so that would kind of be my ex's formula all the time if it was, came to going out. It's just, let's get dressed up. She knows. She's not stupid. I mean, she's fully aware of what she's rocking, we'll say. And so she's rocking it to, an umpteenth degree. But as soon as we get out and anybody starts looking, this is when the complaints start raining down. He's looking. I'm like, of course he is. You're not only, you would be attractive in a raincoat and people would look, but you're on display and you know it and you're complaining. I don't like that hypocrisy. I think that's bullshit. You have to be prepared for it. And I know that you wished we lived in this Balmoric fantasy world where you could nance around and just, Mary Poppins style, and everybody was asexual and it wasn't a thing. It's not. We don't live in a world like that. And you know it. And this is your power. This is where you get part of your power from. In fact, having been married to you for as long as I was, I would say this is where you sadly derive most of your power. And a lot of women do. And that's really sad, because a lot of women actually have a lot more to give to the world than that as far as their personality or something that would be underneath the skin, but they learn at a really early age, this is where my power is with the lower energy basis of society. And so that's what I'm going to put on display. And they fall victim to that. And I've watched her do that. I watched a lot of people do that. But so I don't like that game at all because it's hypocrisy. It's bullshit. We all have our hypocrisies, but I don't like that one in particular. So she seemed like one of those too yesterday, for what it's worth. I'm not, oh, hey, sugar, you looking at me? Yeah. I mean, you're winking back and you're playing the whole game. You're dressing like this. You got it all hanging out, and people are going to start looking, and you're going to go, ugh, get away from me. Don't look at me. When that's all you're after. That's all you're here for, is to get those looks. But you want to snub everybody for doing it, even though that's what you've set yourself up for. It's a bizarre game, and men and women alike have to quit playing it with each other. Although I think women are unfortunately more guilty of it because they're more apt to get a lot of looks in public. Try not to look back and have any regrets making yourself into a different person. This is that stage of the game. You're getting there soon as well.
Yeah.
But I found it really sneaking in since I turned 50. Oh, if I could only go back and know then what I know now, that whole thing. And that's where that comes from, is if I could only go back and through the course of the time that it's taken for me to get out of these crutches that I had for whatever reason. And sometimes it takes a couple of years. And sometimes in my case, like I said, it took 26, but that's the way it goes. And so that's where that comes from. It's bred from, I wish I could go back and have gotten over these things that I wasn't over then, because I realize now how limiting they were. Well, you can't. I mean, not in this life, but you'll get another incarnation as somebody and something else. And so
no,
as
but
far as
I also think it's healthy because it's a reflection point too. And I think I've done that a lot lately after turning 40 with professional relationships that I've had. And it's interesting. I think you're probably the only person I've really ever stayed in contact with regularly since moving on to another part of my career, or another chapter of my career. But it's interesting that I look back at those relationships that I had and how, knowing now what I know, if I would have known it then, I probably would have treated them a little differently. And, I think a lot of that also has to do with just you're learning the ropes and you're learning life. And not that I necessarily regret anything that I did or didn't do, but it's like, man, if I could only have gone back and maybe handled that relationship a little differently, and I think that's healthy.
If karma is real, which I know it to be, I don't know if it's real for everybody, and maybe it's a personal choice, but I think karma exists for sure. I think it can be instant in some cases, just like Taster's Choice, I mean, it comes back to get you the next day or next hour. I mean, some of it is lifetimes worth of stuff, and I think that's exactly where that's built in is, whatever this machine is takes account of these experiences. And at the end of it, maybe like a video game, it adds up, the gold pieces in Zelda's pocket after the adventure and says, okay, here's the things that they feel like they got right. And here are the things that they feel they'd like to do differently. And so we'll give them a chance to do it differently in another way. Or maybe the exact same way if you want to hit the reset button. I mean, maybe that's a possibility. I don't know. But anyway, it's an interesting world. Life has been full of surprises, and it's definitely surprised me. But, we grow into what we need to, I guess, when we're ready, and no sooner. And so I must not have been ready to handle having a partner who I really felt like was a friend of equal measure until I was almost 50. So
wow.
Here we are. But I feel a lot better about it.
You arrived, and isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Here.
You're here.
I'm here.
It doesn't matter how long it took you, but it really does. It kind of comes back to, you've been able to reflect on everything that you've learned, and you're able to appreciate that kind of spark of brilliance that you've gained in that journey.
Well, like I said, I didn't have much of a male role model when I was a child. My father was very absent, and he looked at women as being possessions, and he treated them very much like cars. They were supposed to be beautiful and sit and be glossy and say nothing until they were revved up and spoken to or jumped in to drive, and the automobile metaphor very much fit my father's MO with women, and that sadly trickled down to my brother, who found him to be very iconic. And so I think, unfortunately, a lot of the tendencies of brother were the only ones that I had to model that after as a child.
True.
And that really is kind of what became the MO through a good chunk of my life as a result, because my first, because they were always into the blonde bombshell thing. The blonde Bond girl was the woman that you wanted, no matter how wretched a conversationalist she was, or whatever. It was all about aesthetics. It was just very shallow, and that's not like me at all. But unfortunately, in that capacity, it sadly was. Capacity like this in a forum like this, and maybe recount in another way someday too. So it's all good.
It's another thing. I was blessed and fortunate to have really good parents. And I say parents because I have 4 parents. My parents divorced when I was very young. And so I never actually really remember my parents being married, which is kind of weird if you think about it. But, I think what I gained was 4 parents that had different life experiences. The thing that I've always thought was fascinating about your father was rather old when you were born.
My parents were a couple years apart. My dad was just a little bit older than my mother, I want to say by 3 years. So my dad was almost 40 when I was born, and my mother was 37, just about. So I want to say, yeah.
So your dad was like my age when you were born. And I'm thinking back and and my dad, I think, was in his late 30s when I was born. But you think about we just talked about the stages and the chapters that people are in as they evolve and as time goes on, and they morph, or maybe they don't, and they reflect, or maybe they don't. And there's you think back on, man, I can't even imagine having young kids at my age. I'm glad my kids are at the age that they are, because, you kind of get into this, you become the product of the chapter that your parents are in at the time that you're born.
Yeah, it's funny because by the time I was old enough to understand what a marriage and a relationship between two people was even remotely about, my parents couldn't stand each other. And it's, to this day, I've often wondered what that must have looked like earlier on. I can't envision an incarnation of my parents where they were into each other, where they liked each other and they talked to each other. And because that was never a thing growing up, they were always just either avoiding each other or they were fighting with each other. And that was it. I mean, that was all that happened. So, but yeah, I mean, it gets me to thinking about, where we get tied up with this whole sex thing in relationships, and why some people are so promiscuous and, slightly promiscuous, or don't mind having dalliances because they're healthy, they think, or, it's a personal choice. But I'm sure there are some people that I can see saying, well, you're the one that's making me out to be, less than you, and you're the one that's missing out because you just think too highly of yourself. You won't even come down off your pedestal for a second. And it's very possible. Again, that's something else I've considered as I've gotten older, is maybe that is kind of the truth, Jack, is that you maybe you put yourself a little bit too high up and you were a little too untouchable. Maybe not for ego. Maybe it was a fear reaction or something. I don't know. But
well, I mean, since this has become kind of a self-reflection podcast, we never really we never plan these things. But since this is becoming a self-reflection podcast, I would like to chime in a little bit too, because I think that, how you view yourself plays a huge role in how you project yourself to other people. And I think part of that reflection of my past and especially when you and I used to work together, one of the things that I wish that I would have done is really kind of just cut myself more slack and not taken myself so seriously. Because one of the things that, that I think attributed to some of the stress that I had felt in that job, in that career path or in that chapter, resulted from me taking myself way too seriously and expecting other people to perform at a level that they weren't able to achieve. And that led to drinking. Never crossed into work, but it was just one of those things where I think I had kind of bought into that self-lie of this is what I need to do in order to deal with life. I need to just, run to the bottle every Friday or every time, the 5 o'clock rolls around. I mean, it got to the point where it was like, it kind of starts to weigh on you. And then I think you can do that too with fast food as well. Like where if you have it for breakfast every day, then you'll most likely have it for either dinner or for lunch. Or, it becomes this kind of like habit to where those things, whether it's drinking or whether it's fast food they all just kind of become these vices that take control of your life. And then as a result, that ends up being what you project to other people, the decisions that you make, and ultimately how you view yourself and how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, well, running to the bottle, alcohol that is, or drugs as a coping mechanism is, I would say it's a trickle-down learned behavior. I had someone who I got pretty close to, I don't know if they do anymore, but they drank quite a bit. And I kind of suspected going in that it was a coping mechanism. And after getting to know them even just a little, I could see, oh yeah, I'm not a psychologist, certainly. And I don't necessarily believe in everything it teaches either. But
and no baristas were harmed in the filming of this podcast.
She wasn't a barista. So.
Okay, good.
I never slept with any of the baristas. My ex-wife was a barista, actually. That's when I met her.
There seems to be a pattern here, Jack.
My first serious girlfriend, I got a job at the same coffee cart I worked at, so she became a barista. We all have baggage. There's that baggage bullshit that we talk about. Metaphorically, it really is a true item, though, that we tend to encumber ourselves with. But most of us, if the baggage was checked in a long time ago, it's usually pretty standout baggage. We're talking about serious abuses or neglect that occurred during childhood, or things that people need lifetimes worth of therapy in some cases to just cope with, let alone try and remove as an influencer in their daily lives. But I think this person had a lot of baggage that some of it may have been that severe. I don't know. I never heard anything like that, but it wouldn't surprise me. But there was just a lot of really small baggage that seemed like it had just accumulated for a long time. And a lot of it was just like, why are you still thinking about that? That was a while ago now, and you've moved beyond that. I mean, she was a woman in her early 30s, but, I don't know. It's try not to drive yourself crazy looking back and saying I would have done this differently, because you can't. And so the best thing that you can do is, if there's any body that you feel like you really adversely impacted because of some of these behaviors or because of the drinking or whatever, if they're still around or you happen upon them, tell them. That's the only way I can think of that you could truly make any kind of amends, if there's any amends that's necessary, is to just reach out, or if you happen along them, just say, hey, remember when we worked together and I was the boss and I did this thing, I really look back and regret that. So I just want to say that I'm sorry about that. That's about all you can do.
If any of this conversation and this discussion of ego and reflection had any kind of, hit with any of the audience today, I want to fully recommend this book, and this is probably, there's only one of two books that I've ever really recommended in my entire life, and The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, Eckhart Tolle, yeah.
Oh my gosh. That changed my life, and that changed the perspective of how my inner voice plays a role in just kind of my outlook on life. So I would highly recommend that to anyone.
Yeah. And I would close by saying to, I guess it's kind of where I'm at right now. So it's a mini impromptu download, I guess, if you will, but just trying to accept what you are and be okay with that. I think there's what we want to be. And then I also think there's what we're naturally inclined to be. And if what you're naturally inclined to be really isn't hurting anybody, including yourself, maybe it's time to stop fooling yourself and to just go with it and just say, you know what? Because here's the thing. Modern life for a westernized person, like most of us probably are who are listening to this or who certainly are doing this podcast, it's filled with hypocrisy. And that's what's beginning to start to trip me up as I get older is, no, I won't like this because of these rat bastards who run it and are involved in it and yet I kind of like that, but I don't want to let myself. And that's a constant tripping mechanism. So, I'm constantly sneaking things, let's say, that you might hear me say I would otherwise just bash on a public forum like this. Could you find Jack possibly watching,
Desperate Housewives?
Well, it doesn't go that deep. I'm going to say that, but maybe like when the Stanley Cup is happening, could he maybe just, in the gym, instead of just staring straight ahead, is he kind of peeking at the TV to see, who won last night, or, and it's because those are ingrained things. And it shows you if you're awake or you're awakening, and I'm not claiming to be fully awake, certainly, because to me that, I don't know if that ever happens in this experience. I'm not sure that you want to, because it might just be a big when you burn out or something. But, when you become aware of the factions that run, well, it's true. I used to say that the only way that you become truly enlightened is to become light. That's the only way that you'll ever be fully enlightened is when you become light. And that's very abstract and no one knows what it means. And I honestly can't say I can put it into words, but I've actually visualized it. I've visualized okay,
I like it.
Here's enlightenment.
Mm-hmm. You ready for mine?
You're what?
That's why I was laughing off mic. So when the pandemic was happening, and I know it was a weird time for everyone, and books are probably going to be written for decades. Well, our grandparents had the Great Depression, and we had the great, I don't know what you want to call it, the social distancing.
Yeah. I don't think the pandemic was great in the reaction to it, but I'm not sure that the actual pandemic was
terrible. We had to stay at home and do nothing and watch Tiger King all day. It was terrible. No, I mean, I was just thinking about something that I coined during that time of life, and that's why I say that a reference point is everything, but I'm so woke I can't even sleep.
Well, I think there's also something to be said for being awake or awakened to a degree and not woke, because I think woke, as we've learned, is a little different thing. In this political stream that we have that's running just full torrent at both spectrums on both poles is just, suck you into the whirlpool. And so, because I just feel like most people are in the middle of that, and we're stuck. I really do feel like most people are not in one of those extremes or the other. I think that I'd like to believe still, that people are decent and honest and they really do their best, and they fuck up once in a while because everybody does, but it's not a big fuck up. It's not a grand thing like we're talking about with this sex trafficking and these, adrenochrome chugging and making children afraid so that people can get off. I mean, all this horrible stuff that our lives are filled with now on a daily basis. And, I think it's all part of the awakening process to the enemy and to the demons that, be they real or otherwise, drive these things to be done by certain people in our world. And, you've got to know the enemy. And so you've got to know what you're up against. And I think that's one of the things that we're being briefed right now as part of our experience here is, okay, look, you guys all go to Disneyland and you play badminton and you watch Tiger King, like you said, and you enjoy a good Hostess Twinkie and you have sex, and there's ways to prevent it from having children and ways to enhance your orgasm. And also you guys are checked out, and it's time that you got a little bit of an update, a reality thump about what's really going on in the world in certain places. And so here you go. And if you don't think you're tied to that to some measure, you're wrong. And if you don't think there's something you can't do about that, you're also wrong to a degree. But Maddie and I have been talking about that a lot lately because she's been running across a lot of content on social media about how to unplug from the Epstein drama and all this horrible stuff that's getting pumped out there, because people are losing their shit thinking about what's happened to all these innocent children and women and people. And it's like I told her, you got to keep a perspective on that stuff, because you have to understand at the end of the day that your role in all of that, all of those most heinous things that we think about, your absolute role at the end of the day in that is universal. It's axiomatic, and it's the same for every single one of us. Yes, while you can join groups of people and stand up and protest and get your signs out, and not saying that you shouldn't either, but while you can do all of that to try and forward some kind of change and difference, you can't depend on that having an impact. The one and only thing that you can absolutely do to forge a change is never to do those things yourself to another person. That's it. That's the only thing you can truly rely upon yourself to do at the end of every day that makes that difference, is not perpetrate the same ills that you're hearing about that others have been guilty of. Well, and that's it. And it's the same for anything you might hear that's similar or even falls way below it. The only way you don't get a parking ticket is you don't park there. Yeah. I mean, it goes all the way down to being that innocuous.
Well, and one thing I will add again on this whole chapter that we're in with the reckoning, as we've called it on the podcast, is at least, I've got hopeful. I'm hopeful for humanity in the sense that we have, I think, seen a line that's being drawn, and there is a genuine consensus that enough's enough. And there were parts of our history, and I don't want to get into the weeds too much with you on this, but there were parts or times in our history where things would happen with people in power, and it was just kind of like, yeah, it's okay. He can get away with that because he's the president or whatever. I mean, and I think that at this point, we're finally saying no. There's going to be some accountability. And whether we believe that it's going to be, people are going to be held to the level of accountability that they deserve to be held to, or that there weren't victims involved, or justice being served, whatever that view is of justice, I still think there's hope for humanity in the sense that people are finally going, okay, now this is too far.
Well, we're still here and we have it tomorrow. So I guess that always paints a palette for hope for humanity, because we have that choice every single day. And I'll frost the cupcake further by just saying this, because I can be quite the misanthrope, the self-professed space kiddo here who likes to disassociate himself from humanity because he doesn't really believe that he's a part of it, but he's running around in one of their skins. So you got to take some ownership at some point, right? And again, I can be as misanthropic as anybody, but I would say if you're down on humanity, enlarge your perspective, take what you said and absolutely plug it in day to day, but enlarge your perspective as well to a universal sense, and think about all the life forms that are out there and realize that human beings have an absolute purpose in the universe. And I'm convinced that it's our stock in truly being able to have the best time of any of the critters on this block or any other in the known realms. I mean, we really know how to party it up, how to celebrate our existence. The only problem we're having right now is that we're young. We're a very young species. And so that energy isn't harnessed yet. It's not under control. It's frenetic as fuck. It's bouncing all over the place, just like we are. But that's exactly what I think most of our ET friends who check in on us and have been looking in on us, they may know better, but they don't know how to do that. And they want that desperately. They want us to get our shit under control so we can show them this is how you do that. This is how you celebrate being here. And you're not so fucking Vulcan about it. You're not so gray alien about it. You're really celebrating being here.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in what is it?
Area 51.
Area 51.
Something that got a lot of attention this week. Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know?
So aliens are real?
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
Those are real sound bites. That happened.
Is that DT talking about Barack?
Yeah. Now I got one more for you. I want to play.
At the end, quite unusual, because I started being asked about UFOs and a series of questions about Pizzagate, one of the most vile, bogus conspiracy theories.
Hillary Clinton, ladies and gentlemen. Those were all three sound bites that have actually happened in the last 2.5 weeks. That's the world we're living in. I thought all three of those things happening in probably a week and a half, having those three people commenting on the same things, I thought was, the stars are aligning somewhere.
Yeah, so why, here's the thing though, why would the people that deposed Hillary Clinton about Jeffrey Epstein want to know how would extraterrestrial intelligences have anything to do with that?
It's because
that alone, and that admission alone that she was queried about that is really telling. I mean, that's really bizarre to me. That lends even more credence to it.
Well, and you got to remember there are two members on that committee that also are the members that are involved in the UAP disclosure committee. And so
they are? Okay.
Yeah, there's some crossover there. I think it's Representative Luna and so there's some crossover amongst the members of Congress in that situation. Man, time just always flies when we get together, I tell you.
Yeah, we didn't talk about any of the stuff that we planned to either, by the way.
Not that we plan a whole lot, but, we do have a little bit of a roadmap.
Chicken scratch. It's chicken scratch on a napkin, but...
Yeah, well, the napkin just went out the window. I guess we'll have to find it for another time. Or will we? I don't know. Just kind of, that's the way things go sometime.
Like the winds, the show just passes through.
What are we listening to?
This is one of many bands called Surrender, but this is the one from New York. This CD used to fetch thousands of dollars on eBay, believe it or not, before it was reissued finally, and everybody could enjoy it.
True capitalism at its finest. What do you think the taxes were on that CD?
Well, they sold them on eBay, so whatever eBay was charging for taxes. They charge tax on foreign goods. Like if I buy a pair of shoes from Milan, they tax it. And I'm like, that's funny. I didn't buy it from my state. I bought it from Italy. Why am I getting taxed my state sales tax on it for buying it Oh, because you made the purchase from home in your state. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Then
The
you get-
goods aren't located there. I can buy a car out of state, but if I want to license it, it's that game. Okay.
You get dinged with a tariff, too.
Yeah, I got my official notice about being tariffed the other day. I literally, I'm a tariff. Like every time Maddie wants to, have a kiss or something, she gets a tariff notice. So.
Until we meet again, Jack.
All right, fair enough. See ya.
Well, it looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own existence brewing, be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.